Shahnameh stories, the 7 labors of Rostam, Haftkhane Rostam, the battle with the white Div, Part 4. In addition to its visual symbolism, the seventh Khan is the most poignant psychological representation of the triumph of good over evil. As the agent of Ahriman, the white Div is an exceptional master of malice and magic, in whom strength, power, intellect, and wisdom come together to challenge Rostam. It is therefore imperative that Rostam destroy this mighty and intriguing representative of the Dark Lord. As we have seen throughout the previous stories, the image of the Div, and by extension his interaction with Rostam and the viewer, evolves over time. In the 7th and final Khan, the relationship progresses from the equality of the two to the maimed and disadvantaged demon at Rostam's mercy, a range that artists have underplayed or dramatized according to their artistic milieu and creativity. The early 15th century settings are chilling and the Divs terrifying. In this, the finest manuscript of the atelier of Prince Baysungur, the grandson of Taimur, the undulations of earth tones, vibrant green and blue, either crash or bleed into each other, producing frothy crests of white and nuanced shades that insinuate the rock formations capping the dark cave. Yet the colors and the life brought by them stop there. In this most searing of images, the once formidable monster, painted a jarring white, lies pathetically frail and defenseless within the bare blackness of the colossal cavern. His extreme, almost luminous paleness is a dramatic contrast against the impenetrable black void of the cave and the intense saturation of the rest of the image. With its excessively big and irregularly shaped head, protruding forehead and nose, scrunched up eyes and beardless jutting chin, the human-looking white Div in the Baysunguri Shahnameh is quite unique in its configuration. Turning away, the Div clutches his severed leg by the ankle, staring at it with tender horror and dismay. The disproportionately large and bird-like feet, with long, sharp claws and spurs, contrast the tiny hand as his bony, dislocated arm and shoulder twist to grab onto Rostam in the desperate struggle to steady himself. The red-bearded Rostam's eyebrows knot under his gold helmet with the scarlet tassel whose colour is picked up in the blood drops that burst from the Div's chest as the dagger penetrates deep into the translucent white demon body. The action takes place inside a huge cavern beneath a mountain that is created from layers of fractured rock strata and the eerie, slow seismic movement of live organisms that writhe within the coral crusts that characterize Timurid landscapes. The familiar fantastical setting of Timurid painting is especially effective at evoking atmosphere, and in particular in stories of doom and gloom that we see here at its most extraordinary. Yet the layers of colourful rocks of blue, green and purple piled precariously against the sheer sheet of mountain are not altogether a figment of the artist's imagination, and we find their real counterparts in the spectacular cliffs of the province of Lorestan in western Iran in the Zagros Mountains. Baysungur, himself a connoisseur and a capable calligrapher, was the patron of the Herat school that, together with those of Tabriz and Shiraz, were the most important schools of painting in medieval Iran. The pathos and drama that comes at the end of the seventh labor is compelling because Ferdowsi has established the psychological complexity of the combat by taking us into the thoughts and respective emotional states of the two, thereby deepening our appreciation of Rostam and the White Deev's relationship. While they do not communicate with dialogue like the dragon in the third Khan, both reveal human frailty that is perhaps the most fascinating feature of the story and one that is, to varying degrees, communicated by the artists. As with the blinding of Kekavus, while he is portrayed as a formidable adversary, the White Deev is not a savage, and like all of Ferdowsi's characters, has his own three-dimensional personality, nuanced idiosyncrasies, and nature. The struggle between the two equals is heightened through the internal dialogue during this early part of their battle, when the White Deev is still standing and both are fighting for their lives. We see the usually intrepid hero at his most vulnerable, and perhaps for the only time in his life, scared. Once inside the cavern, Rostam is described as pausing and rubbing his eyes in an attempt to get his bearings in the terrifying abyss. If I survive this day, I shall never die, he thinks to himself. The Deev's stream of consciousness is even more surprising and unsettling, as he realizes that even if he survives, he is doomed to a life of shame. There is no hope for me, for should I escape this dragon's claws, maimed as I am and torn, none great or small within Mazandaran will look at me. There is fear, humanity, and courage on both sides. The White Deev has been maimed and is about to fall, yet he fights on. Indeed, Ferdowsi uses similar words, such as noble elephant or raging lion, to describe both Rostam and the White Deev. Here, in one of the most powerful portrayals of the seventh Khan, the artist has illustrated the rarer moments before the stabbing, where Ferdowsi describes the difficulty and uncertainty in this combat between two equals. As in the paintings where the White Deev eloquently chastised Kekavus for invading Mazandaran, the artist here emphasizes the White Deev as a worthy adversary for Rostam by making him tower over the hero who stares down worriedly. For his part, the ferocious White Deev drops his millstone and roars as Rostam slices into his knee, his pain personified by the electrified sharp horns and amplified by the screeching twigs. While the scene depicts the events specified by the verse just above the painting, the relegation of the usual break line to the bottom last line of the painting is anomalous within the pictorial tradition of the seventh labor. The fact that the majority of the illustrations of the seventh labor show Rostam thrusting his dagger into the supine White Deev implies that Rostam stabbed the White Deev to death. This is compounded by the way in which, in the vast majority of the illustrations, the Deev is clutching Rostam's arm or scruff of the neck, and although he is in the last moments of life, he is not yet dead. In reality, according to Ferdowsi, the demon actually died when Rostam threw him to the ground, after which he stabbed him. This crucial fact is often omitted, since it is the actual thrust of the dagger that has become the graphic representation of the Deev's end, an event that has eclipsed both the death of the demon just before and overshadowed the subsequent, gorier act of the extraction of the heart that is the definitive end of the scene. Nonetheless, as bloody and violent as the stabbing can be, it offers a deeper glimpse into the humanity of the demon, who is almost always looking at Rostam with open eyes. While Rostam's expression is, with a few exceptions, detached, The white Div exhibits an interesting range of emotions that include nonchalance, amusement, defiance, anger, and pathos as he clings on to his last moments of life. While for the most part the illustrations show Rostam holding the Div's horn with one hand and stabbing him with the other, some variations show him with a raised dagger moments before. In this noisy painting full of rambunctious demons, a subdued white Div clasps Rostam by the waist, while his two chopped off legs flail about to the sympathy of the distraught twigs, flowers, and shrubs. While, as we saw, some illustrations deviate with the addition of a chopped off second leg or hand, the Div often has both arms intact, one with which he clutches Rostam's hand to stop or pull out the dagger being thrust into his chest, and the other that either grabs him by the clothes or holds him around the shoulders in varying degrees of closeness and intimacy. Here, in an extraordinary moment of complicity, the white Div wraps his large hand around the shoulders of the hero, who smiles tenderly even as he plunges the dagger into the demon's heart. As if speaking the last words of a foe vanquished fairly and honourably, the Div seems to hug Rostam as he drifts into death, his days created by the half-moon strokes of his eyes beneath the flaming gold eyelids. Outside, even the usually stoic Raksh neighs with sad, downcast eyes. Similarly, this scene, set at the beginning of the story when they are tearing at each other's flesh as indicated by the break line, gives the impression of two old friends greeting one another. Notwithstanding his frown as he towers over Rostam and his severed leg that goes marching off out of the triangular cave, the white Div drapes a protective arm over Rostam and the adoring leopard head, as the smiling hero wraps both arms around the creature. In this painting, the friendly white Div's spindly fingers press against Rostam's back as he peers pensively at the Div from beneath the oversized leopard helmet. As his dagger plunges unobstructed into the demon's paunch, the impact is felt by the tug of the small hand on Rostam's blue quiver. In this beautifully preserved manuscript, we see the full impact of the storybook effect of the Shahnameh as it should be. Rather than pushing him away, the Div with two severed legs but intact arms is hugging Rostam with both in another quasi-cuddle, as if reassuring him that it's all right. Rostam's mouth has tightened in a lopsided purse under the downturned moustache as he looks for a reaction to the stabbing. Here, a green-eyed white Div with full golden eyelids and high double horns has looped his arm over and pulled the regretful uni-browed Rostam to him in a firm bear hug as both look away from the viewer. The gory slit in the demon's stomach from which his liver seems to be hanging out belies the affectionate clasp of Rostam's other hand around the Div's neck. But the paradox of the seeming camaraderie is not lost on Ulad and Raksh, who gape in astonishment at the scene below them. However, the artist in this painting cancels all conjecture about the white Div's noble acceptance of his end by perhaps portraying his true nature. While the seeming depth of understanding between the two is indicated by the Div's right arm that embraces Rostam, his left has furtively grasped a boulder and is poised to throttle Rostam over the head. In the next video, we shall look at more extraordinary paintings of the seventh Khan, including the exquisite painting from the Shahnameh of Shah Tahmasp.